Unstuck Club, episode 6. I'm so bewildered that it's episode 6 that I actually, when I set this up, I was like, Unstuck Club, episode 5. But no. How are you, Di?
I'm good. I'm just this I must say this record I never realized that recording this podcast would provide such entertainment.
But no.
As we learn as we go, and the glitches, and I don't know if it is Mercury retrograde or what, but yeah, it's been an absolutely fascinating few days.
Really has. It really has, and we have not given up. Like, we have been honest at points, and there's been everything. Like, we've had literally technical glitches, right? Then I've had like Wi-Fi issues, and then electricity issues, and then I've got builders across the road. So we were all ready to start, and then I was like, "Duh, can you hear that drilling?"
Yeah, I mean
it's a beautiful metaphor. Yeah, it's a beautiful metaphor for life, don't you think? Like, your absolute best intentions, and not to read into so much when something doesn't go in the right direction, because it's not like, I mean, we did say, okay, maybe it's not the right time to record, but if we can get over the top when things are really sticky, one of us could have gone, maybe this podcast is a bad idea. The universe is trying to tell us this podcast is a bad idea.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to get sucked into that. There is so much around the signs and the messages. So, is the mess, okay, well, we're not meant to do this. It's a sign that we're not meant to do this. Yeah. And I think it is. And I know it's something that you want to talk about today. And I think there is at the moment a huge danger that we just end up being so hard and just again it goes back to these external signs and messages, instead of like, no, we have fun doing this, we love doing it, so if we have to delay it by a couple of hours while the builders finish their drilling, then that's what we do. It's not set in stone. When we do have it formalized because we need some kind of structure, but if it has to adapt, then that's where we go with it.
Absolutely. I think there's something, a lot of people send me messages about numerology. And they say to me, I'm seeing 1111, or I've just seen 1212, or I've just seen 333. What does it mean? And I always give the same response. So this is for anyone who thinks they're going to message me. You always can, and I will always tell you a little bit about the numerology, but I have a standard response, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. When you see that, for me, it's the universe saying, pay more attention to other things. So it's not about reading into everything, because we get so lost in reading into everything that all these other little things are happening that we are completely missing out on. And I've just done a post now while I was waiting for the noise outside to stop. So today, on my nomad journey, we're really close to Cape Point, and there's this long queue of tourists. Like, I can't even tell you the length of tourists, and they're all going to see the tourist attraction, which is up the mountain to the lighthouse, picture at the lighthouse. And I'm with a friend who we've actually bonded over this time, me being a nomad, she's the neighbor. It's so lovely. And I was like, where don't the tourists go? Because that's where I wanted to go. And I've just posted a picture of me you can I mean, I'm tiny because I just wanted everyone to see the vastness, like the absolute vastness of nothingness, because that is what's so important. Don't be so freaking focused on following what you've set out to do. Don't be so like this focused. Like everyone is just, those cars are just in a line. No one's detouring off to die. There's roads. There's just roads everywhere. And it takes you to different beaches in all the different places. No one's going there. Uh, they're heading to the goal that they've set, or what everybody says.
Yeah.
And like when you look at numbers, or when you're looking for a sign, like sometimes the sign is just pay attention to all the little things that are coming along, and spend some time just in the wonderment of what you're currently sitting with, instead of focusing so much on, like, give yourself a break from trying to reach something, trying to get somewhere, trying to freaking get unstuck. Like, give yourself a break from it for a little while, right?
Yeah. Do you think that, when you were telling that story now, do you think that because of the way the world is, and because there's been like this huge surge of like personal growth and healing, and I know like one of the big trends at the moment is healing your childhood trauma.
Yes.
That's my social media feed is absolutely full of therapists and therapies and trauma and childhood trauma and how it impacts you now. Do you think we've lost some of our bravery as human beings?
Just elaborate on bravery.
So it is exactly that, like, oh, this says 1010, like what does it mean? Or
So
yeah,
I think more
yeah,
so how I'm interpreting it is more of the bravery to just trust ourselves, right? And
yes,
not
like
have to,
yes,
yes.
yes, yes.
You know, one day one of the guests is going to be my business partner, Greg, absolutely, for sure. Sometimes, when I was very stuck in all of my stuff, exactly what you're talking about, Di, I would tell Greg something and he'd go, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Yes.
And I used to get so frustrated. He's like, it doesn't always have to be a lesson. And you don't always have to be focusing. And interestingly that you say that, because I've had to get out of that. I used to be like that. I used to absolutely exhaust myself. And yes, the more I have worked into what we call the process of faith, right? So we work with the process of faith. It's the ability to focus, to accept the things that you cannot change, to trust your instinct and understand why you're doing what you're doing. So the big question is why. Then to actually trust yourself, your universe,
Mm.
and to really be in the moments that are happy, not create the moments that are happy, but be in the moments that are happy. And the
You missed
more I've
you
done that,
missed sorry, Joe, you missed the I.
intention,
Yeah. So you set your
right? So
intentions, what you want.
it's focus. And when we talk about focus, and this is something that we do in the coaching, right? So when we talk about focus, it's not sit down and focus. It's pay attention to the present moment. Like, on this drive today, I'll post it later. I kept on wanting Kathy to stop because there's this beach that is so beautiful, and I just this paying absolute attention to getting closer. So I kept on stopping, so that I paid such attention to just getting closer, just getting closer. I'm telling you that there were people, and I say this with such empathy, there's a lot going on in the world. There is financial scarcity, there is anxiety, there is war, there is so much going on. And then our own personal capacity, our family dynamics, our poor relationships with ourselves, maybe an unhealthy relationship, people are lonely, all these different things. That doing that drive, I'm sure there's so many people who just didn't notice the
Mm,
ocean or didn't notice. We drove past and I was like, stop the car, there's baby ostriches. They were totally blended in. I mean, they were ostriches on the beach.
mm,
And that's that when we talk about focus, it's not focus on work, it's not focus on the goal, it's not focus on the outcome. It's actually just let your mind go from all of that stuff and pay beautiful attention to the present moment, to where you are, to what you're experiencing, to that cliche of stop and smell the roses, right?
mm, mm,
And then acceptance. And the reason why I'm going through each of them is because the point is going to get to exactly what you were saying, Da. The point is going to get to what happens when you bring your mind into the present moment. And that's what these steps of faith do. Acceptance is to understand that the ploy of the ego is to get stuck in would have, could have, should have, ifs, buts, if onlys. If you can stop yourself from could have, would have, should have, if but only, and say it is what it is, where to from here. I I watched a TikTok of a guy, and he said it was so amazing because the way he did it, it sounded like it was going to be such a bad thing. He said, if you have someone in their life, in your life, who says it is what it is, run, run. And he said, because that person who says it is what it is, they don't care what you do to them. They don't
mm,
care what happens. Because as soon as you do it, they will say, it is what it is.
mm.
And they will carry on. They will carry on.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not easy, but it is the great ploy of the mind. Like at some point in time, every single one of us has to actually go, this up here is controlling me and I need to take control of it back.
Mm,
And
mm,
that taking control of it back is to be able to say, it is what it is. Like the ifs, the buts, the could have, the should have, you can do nothing about it. Just gets us stuck, right?
mm. And then it's so it is what it is. What am I going to do about this? Is yeah.
And this is the most important thing. It's what do I have the capacity to do?
Yeah.
What do I have in my power to do? Because what a lot of people do is to take it outside of themselves again, and then will have an expectation on someone else. It is what it is, and then to wait for something else to happen. It's actually to ask yourself, what do I have the power to do? And sometimes the only power that you have, which is not, when I say only, it's not small, it's actually really big, is the power to change your mind and have a different attitude. Sometimes it's not even action. Sometimes it's got nothing to do with action. It's purely just about
Mm,
changing your mind and having a different attitude.
mm,
We had a beautiful conversation today about getting a story from someone else who said, I want you to hear the story before you hear the story from anybody else. So that was messaging that came to me. And then in my response to this person, I said, thank you for sharing with me. But actually, it's none of my business because it's your story. So thank you for
mm.
sharing that I didn't have to hear it somewhere else. And I know that they are going to get a lot of chirpings from a lot of other people, right? And the only thing that they can do right now is just hold their story and say it is what it is, and what do I have the capacity to do? Sometimes it's just
Yeah.
let the truth sink in, right?
That's
Right.
that's
Mm.
that's so interesting because you often see that on social media. Like someone will post like not having the greatest day, like feeling a bit down or whatever. And you'll get a whole lot of people going, what's wrong? What happened? what happened. It's less about the person and how they're feeling and them wanting
Yep.
to know what the
What's the
circumstances or
story?
what's the story. Yeah. So how would it be if you didn't have to know the story? You just know that your friend or that person is in struggle, is in the mud. You don't have to
Absolutely.
know how they got into the mud. It's actually not your business unless
Complete.
they come to you and say, I really need to run this past you, I'm needing to offload or I'm needing advice or something like that. But we are so quick to want to know what the story is. So then we can have an opinion about it.
Absolutely. And even when you ask advice, and I'm going to use my best friend, who is my business partner as well. We do not think alike at all, right? And it's because this is what we do. We work with people's personalities. So before we can say to someone else, we will show you the power of understanding your personality, we have done all of this work so that we have coached ourselves in our coaching stuff to know this is my personality and this is how I manage it, and this is your personality and this is how you manage it. So I cannot go to him for advice because I completely understand that him and everybody else on this planet has had their upbringing, has their belief system, has their own intuitive traits, has their feeling from the world. And even though we have so much in common, when you ask someone for advice, it's actually coming from, and I want you to listen to what I'm saying, it's coming from their desired outcome. Either their desired outcome for you, because that's what they think is best for you, or their desired outcome for what they would want the desired outcome to be for them if they were in that dynamic.
Okay. The first one, yes. I never really thought about the second one before. So that's a new one on me.
Yeah, that's what people do. They're like,
Yeah.
if I was in this situation without actually saying it, if I was, so they sit, they listen, and then they're gonna get their feeling about the situation, and in that they're gonna give you a response of what would make them feel better if they happened to be in that dynamic.
So now I understand better the foundation of the time to think process. So time to think is a modality, and you literally do very much this in this situation. So if you came to me and said, I have a problem, I need to talk to you, all I would do is listen and receive.
Yes.
That's it.
And that, yes, and then that goes into that third step of faith, which is intention. And you know what you would do? You would listen and you would receive, and then all you would say to me is why. You would just ask me why. Because when you ask why, in the mechanics of the mind, why needs a rational response that the irrational mind can't give. Because it's irrational, right? You're just doing whatever you're doing and you haven't actually thought about what you're doing or how you feel. So when you say why, it brings you into the present moment. And it gives the opportunity for the rational mind to see into the irrational mind and for you to then start hearing yourself think. So that's the most that you would do. And I do want to jump to the answer now. We'll go back to the other 2 points. But if you can do just those 3 things, that very thing that the initial question that you asked, is if you can do that, then you will be braver and you will trust yourself. So that's actually the point. The point is that it's got nothing to do with the outside world. The bravery actually comes from your inability to trust yourself.
Yeah.
To make the right decision for yourself, to like step off whatever it means to step off the ledge and land wherever you want to land. So it actually comes from your ability to trust yourself, which does become the next step in faith, to trust yourself. And anytime that you ask someone else advice, and I'm saying it so gently because I will always reach out to people and kind of get a sense. And sometimes I catch myself and go, you didn't do that in the highest esteem, but that's okay. That's okay. The more you learn to trust the messaging from inside and understand who you are, know the parts of your personality that you can rely on, and trust those inner voices and those thoughts, and whatever you do, the braver you will become. And the less you will need to rely on others. I mean, if I had to line up some of my closest friends and say, do you think being a nomad is a good idea? Do you think letting go of my house and my car and everything that I own and just having 2 suitcases is a good idea? I mean, what would you have said it was a good idea?
For you, yes. For me, hell no. I would always look at it from, for me, that the way you live is like, I'm a nester. I need a base. I could be a nomad, but from a base. So I could venture out, but I would need to know I had a place to come back to. I mean, I am in constant admiration of the fact that yes, you can always go back to family but you don't have, I'm talking about like I would have this house. If I had a house sitter and I went off for 6 months, but I knew I would be coming back to a base. So your way of living completely terrifies me. It's just so far removed from what I think I am, because I'm not saying that, because I've never tried it. The fear, I think, is so great that I don't think I would be brave enough. But I can't say that it's not part of me because I've never been brave enough to try it.
Right. And it's also not for everyone to try, you know? For me, it's if enough people had to say to me, like in this exact conversation, if I had to line up all my friends, because all my friends are saying exactly the same thing. They're saying it suits you, right? But I would be terrified. I would be terrified not to have a base. I would be terrified. If I didn't know myself well enough, eventually that messaging of I would be terrified, I would be terrified. Do you know what happens is you start to feel alone in the world. Why is no one else doing this? Why is everyone who I love and trust, why do they need a piece of property, something to own, something to call their own? You really have to trust yourself, and trust that you know yourself well enough to know that for whatever reason, you don't need that. And sometimes those are the more complicated conversations for me. I love the whimsical conversations, like we were out last night, and it always seems to come up. And actually, people who know I'm a nomad, they will then tell the next person Jodine's a nomad. And then the conversation like kind of rolls over. And when it's lighthearted and whimsical, and people just get excited about hearing what the adventures are like, it's very different to the conversation when people start to go, but aren't you concerned about your future? And you don't have a base, and what happens on when you need the base? Those conversations make me uncomfortable. And I'm going to tell you why, which is a big part for me of getting unstuck. To be able to say, I don't know why, but I just know that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
That's like, what kind of an answer is that? Like, I don't know. I just know that when the time comes, if anything changes, the next whatever will be there for me.
But that's trusting. It's trusting that the universe has your back, and it's also trusting your co-creation with the universe.
Absolutely.
And and that knowing is so important. When I was going through my stuff a couple of weeks ago, I knew I wasn't going to stay there.
Yes.
I knew I would get through it. I knew that I wouldn't have to resort to sort of serious medication or anything like that. There was just a knowing that I had to go through this for some purpose, which is slowly becoming clearer. But it's that inner knowing. And I think that's what we've become so disconnected from, is that inner, like looking at that road and going, oh, I wonder where that road goes. But, so maybe if, as they asked the question of whoever's driving the car and the clock clicked over to 12:12, they would go, oh, it's a sign. We have to go and explore that road. But just making the decision, it's like we want someone else to take responsibility for the decisions that we would love to make.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a big thing to step out of the collective consciousness.
Mm.
And I'm using those words specifically because collective consciousness is it's a genuine thing that holds an aspect of our consciousness. So I know I've told you this a whole lot of times, Di, but it's so important for anyone who doesn't know it. There is something called the 100 monkey experiment, right? And you can look it up. And so the basics of the story is that there are scientists who were researching a certain type of monkey on a particular island, and they washed the sweet potatoes for the monkeys, and then the monkeys started to wash the sweet potatoes. And the fascinating thing was, at a point when a certain number of monkeys were washing the sweet potatoes, on a totally different island, the same species of monkeys started to wash their food, right? So because of that, it proves that there is a collective consciousness. But now this is what's interesting. That collective consciousness actually creates the collective unconsciousness.
Yeah. Okay.
Why are you washing the sweet potato? I don't know, because they're washing the sweet potato.
They wash, yeah. Because we've always done it. Yeah. Why are you doing it that way? Because
why are you in the queue? Why are you in the queue to go there? Or because everybody else is in the queue to go there, and they have said, which is true, it is this beautiful, remarkable point where you can see something that's spectacular. But there are other beautiful, remarkable points.
Yeah.
We got out of we drove today, and we got out of the car, and this friend, she knows my personality now, and if anyone follows me on social, you'll see that my most magical moments are when I see a tree that's just so incredible, or I meet an animal that's, when I saw those ostriches, I was beside myself when I saw the ostriches on the beach. And she said, I'm going to take you somewhere and you're going to tell me why I brought you here. And I walked, and I stopped, and I just absolutely froze. There was a one piece of a skeleton of a whale. It was so big I could have sat under it. It was just like one piece of the skeleton of a whale. And I'm like, I'm so grateful that I took that road less traveled. Like, I'm just so grateful that I took it. But this collective consciousness that actually creates the collective unconsciousness just doesn't take that road off, and doesn't get to see the skeleton of the whale.
Yeah.
Oh, that's saying boo, but that's not right. Yeah, and that then brings us to that very last point of happiness. That's what brings us to the last point of happiness, because a lot of times we're just doing what we're doing, and we aren't actually going, does this make me happy? When I do this, do I feel happy?
Do you think that some people, I think, don't even know what it feels like to be happy anymore.
I
I
think
think
so.
there's so much, I think when people hear your story, yes, there is that, you're crazy kind of thing. But I think there's a lot of people that go, oh my God, I wish I had the courage to walk away from all this same old routine, hamster on the treadmill, endless to-do lists, chained to devices. And I think, yes, I think we've become very stuck in this, always like, what is the meaning, or I'm no good and I need to work on myself, and I'll be happy when I've lost the weight, attained enlightenment, overcome my trauma.
Yeah,
That we very often, we don't know what makes us happy. And that
absolutely.
thing of sitting, in a whale's skull, like suddenly realizing how big they are and how small we are, and looking
Mm,
at that endless ocean, joy is really in those small, simple
mm,
moments. They're not queuing up to go and look at a beautiful scene that will always be there. And as you say, there are so many other beautiful spots. So we spent however many hours queuing when we could have
mm.
been having fun
Yeah,
somewhere else.
absolutely. I had a beautiful conversation with a friend of mine the other day. She's married, she's got young kids, and it's easy for me to say, I can do this, I can do that, because my life choices have been different, and I don't have the kids, and I don't have the kind of anyone. I have a beautiful commitment to my sister and to making sure that I'm around for my nephew this year in his final year of school and all of those kind of things. But otherwise, I can do things differently, and I do have to remind myself so that I don't end up defending myself. It's the choice that I made. I knew a long time ago that I
Yeah.
definitely knew I didn't want children, and when I find a partner, he needs to either be nomadic like me or have done, or hopefully just a great traveler, and says, meet me here, meet me, whatever it is. I've made these choices. So a lot of people sometimes go, yes, but your life is so different. That's why. So in the beautiful conversation we were having, I said to her, like, what can you do that will just bring you a little bit of joy? There's so much responsibility. Like, what can you
Yeah.
simply do that will just give you a little bit of joy? When you've got your beautiful husband, you've got your beautiful children, you've got your home, you've got your career. It's not about becoming the nomad, right? It's
Mm.
for me, it's, I mean, I had the opportunity to do something really, really big and extravagant, and it's little things. I mean, we ended up talking about just a little bit of poetry to get to write, when
Yeah.
the kids are asleep, or a small day trip, or just something. It doesn't have to be huge and big. It doesn't have to be huge and big.
Mhm.
What
Mm.
have you? What have you just pushed aside that genuinely just brings you a little bit of joy? Last night we went out, such a beautiful group of friends. I'm so grateful that I've been invited into this environment and into this circle of friends. And once a month, they find something to do where they can get completely dressed up, completely dressed up. And it was just so much fun. It was really just so much fun. And it's the small moments. It's the
Mm.
tiny moments. It's not you don't have to do something wild and crazy and toss your whole life upside down and disrupt everything. I mean, we're coming to the end of chatting now. Like, I really want to leave this conversation and just say to you, when you're listening, ask yourself, what can I do that can just bring a little bit of joy? Not to be so focused on how do I get unstuck, and it's always about, pushing and figuring out and finding and being this and showing up like this. what just brings you joy that you can do, that doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't take a lot of effort, maybe takes no money at all, because we know that people who are listening, there's, there could be financial stress, pressure, all these things, and it can be something that nobody else understands, but it brings you joy.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing, is it doesn't have to make sense to anybody else. There's no
Completely.
rules to any of this. It's really what works for you. And I mean, yeah, I suppose in this episode we've really kind of done a 180, like we stop worrying about getting unstuck.
Give it a break for a while.
Give it a break. We give you permission to just, stop beating yourself up about all of this, and just, embrace where you are, and give yourself a hug or a pat on the back or a high five in the mirror, and just like, you've come this far. I think that's the other thing, when you look at how far you've come and what you've got through, and it's like, well, if this doesn't deserve some kind of celebration and joyful moment, then I don't know what does. So, yeah.
Completely.
So you have our permission to just ditch getting unstuck for this episode. And on that note,
this is delightful. Thank you, Di, and thank everyone for listening. It's been amazing. Episode 6. Wow.
And thank you, Jo. That was a really cool topic, actually.
It was. Thank you.
Really loved it.
So
and we will see you all in the next episode.
Next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.